Dear Patriots, before the news starts, please subscribe to our patriotic channel by clicking the subscribe button. Give us a thumbs up to this video. Don't forget to leave your opinion below in the comments section. Share the news on Facebook and Twitter so you friends see it. Thank you.
Manafort could face rest of life in prison, judge says. Paul Manafort, the former Trump campaign chairman, runs a significant risk of spending the rest of his life in prison, and the evidence against him by special counsel Robert Mueller's office seems strong, a federal judge declared in an order made public on Tuesday. U.S. District Judge T.S. Ellis III, who is based in Alexandria, Virginia, and is assigned to a newly filed indictment against Manafort dealing with bank fraud and tax evasion, said the veteran lobbyist and political consultant posed a substantial risk of flight because of his assets and the gravity of his legal predicament. The defendant is a person of great wealth who has the financial means and international connections to flee and remain at large, as well as every incentive to do so, Ellis wrote in an order setting the terms of what the judge called home incarceration for Manafort, 68, who lives in Alexandria but also has homes in Florida and on Long Island. Given the nature of the charges against the defendant and the apparent weight of the evidence against him, defendant faces the very real possibility of spending the rest of his life in prison, wrote Ellis, an appointee of President Ronald Reagan. The order, dated Friday, puts Manafort in a 24-hour-a-day lockdown at his Alexandria condo, except for medical appointments or emergencies, court appearances and meeting with his defense attorneys. Ellis did not require Manafort to post any assets, but did order that he pay $10 million if he fails to appear in court. Manafort's conditions of release are now subject to approval by two judges, with the result that the once high-flying international consultant is now wearing two bracelets to allow his movements to be tracked by GPS. Last October, a grand jury in Washington, acting at the request of Mueller's team, returned an indictment charging Manafort with money laundering and failing to register as a foreign agent in connection with his work for Ukraine. Last month, in Alexandria, Mueller's team obtained a second indictment of Manafort on 18 tax, bank fraud and bank fraud conspiracy charges. Mueller's office said that it gave Manafort the option of facing a consolidated case in Washington, but that he declined, insisting on his right to be charged with the new counts in the district where they were committed. Under federal sentencing guidelines, Manafort faces up to nearly 20 years in prison in the Washington case and up to about 10 years solely on the tax charges in the Virginia case if convicted, prosecutors said in a court filing last month. Each of the 9 bank fraud or bank fraud conspiracy charges he faces in the Alexandria court carries a maximum sentence of up to 30 years in prison, although judges generally follow the guidelines, which typically call for sentences well below the maximum. During a hearing on Thursday, Ellis suggested that he was willing to loosen the limits on Manafort's freedom if he pledged property sufficient to assure his appearance in court. Manafort made just such an effort again in the Washington court on Monday, filing a sealed motion listing a series of properties he will put up to try to get released from home confinement. U.S. District Judge Amy Berman Jackson, who was appointed by President Barack Obama, has rejected prior offers from Manafort, saying that it was not clear that the available value in the properties after any mortgages amounted to the $10 million figure she is seeking. Gowdy breaks from GOP committee, says Russia worked to undermine Clinton. A top Republican on the House Intelligence Committee distanced himself Tuesday from one of the panel's most explosive findings in its Russia investigation, that the FBI, CIA and NSA overplayed their hand when they declared Russia preferred a Donald Trump victory in the 2016 election. Representative Trey Gowdy of South Carolina said that the evidence gathered by the committee clearly showed Russia's disdain for Trump's rival, Hillary Clinton, and was motivated in whole or in part by a desire to harm her candidacy or undermine her presidency had she prevailed. A source familiar with Gowdy's thinking said the congressman believes there's no difference between opposing Clinton and backing Trump in what had become, effectively, a two-person race. The source added that Gowdy disagrees with the conclusion that the intelligence agencies got it wrong. He believes the debate over whether desiring a negative outcome for Clinton necessarily meant Russia had a preference for candidate Trump is a distinction that doesn't make a difference, the source said. Gowdy's conclusion is at odds with an overview of the findings of the House's Russia investigation released Monday by the probe's top Republican, Representative Mike Conaway of Texas. Among the findings, although the committee agrees Russia interfered in the election, the intelligence community failed to adequately back up its claim with respect to Putin's supposed preference for candidate Trump. The conclusion that Putin was trying to help Trump, "We don't think that's supported by the underlying data," Conaway said in a phone interview, when asked to elaborate on the committee's finding. He said Republicans on the committee agreed with 98% of the intelligence agency's findings but broke on that central issue. Conaway described a laborious effort to confirm the intelligence community's findings, enshrined in its January 2017 assessment that declared with high confidence that Russian President Vladimir Putin and his government developed a clear preference for President-elect Trump. In the end, Conaway said, the committee found that the agencies didn't meet the burden to prove that assessment. GOP lawmakers and aides told Politico that the committee report isn't a wholesale refutation of the intelligence community's findings. Rather, it's a judgment that the evidence simply fell short of proving the Russian government's preference for Trump, even though the evidence indicates animus toward Clinton. Representative Tom Rooney, Republican Florida, emphasized that point on CNN on Monday night, suggesting that the evidence of Russia's disdain for Clinton was evident but that it did not necessarily support a conclusion that the Russians backed Trump's candidacy. Conaway, too, argues that the discrepancy is an issue of the analytic tradecraft that the intelligence agencies used to reach their conclusion. Other Republicans on the panel agreed that the evidence failed to support the intel agency's conclusions. It is my belief that Russia's intent was to influence our elections by having the American people distrust the institutions that serve them, said Representative Elena Ros-Lehtinen, Republican Florida, in a statement, when asked whether she supported the report's conclusions. However, I do not believe this interference swayed the electorate to vote for one candidate or another. Representative Chris Stewart, Republican Utah, put it even more bluntly. The CIA just got it wrong, Stewart said on CNN on Monday night, saying he had viewed the raw intelligence the agencies used to reach their determination. The CIA just got it wrong, just like they did, by the way, in the Gulf War, when they said there were weapons of mass destruction. The committee's finding tracks with an exchange that Conaway had publicly with former FBI Director James Comey in a March 2017 hearing at the outset of the House's Russia probe. Using a football analogy, Conaway challenged Comey on the FBI's determination that Russia wanted to help Trump. I mean, the logic is that because he really didn't like the candidate Clinton, that he automatically liked Trump. That assessment's based on what? Conaway wondered. Comey replied, well, it's based on more than that. But part of it is, and we're not getting into the details of it here, but part of it is the logic. Whoever the Red Raiders are playing, you want the Red Raiders to win, by definition, you want their opponent to lose. I know, but this says that, you wanted her to lose and wanted him to win. Is that what you were saying? Conaway responded. Right. They're inseparable, Comey said. Representative Adam Schiff of California, the top Democrat on the House Intelligence Committee, said Tuesday that Democrats had hoped to at least find agreement with Republicans on the fundamentals of Russia's scheme to interfere in the 2016 election. But that hope evaporated, he said, with the GOP's decision to break from the intelligence community. It had been our hope for some time that even if there were areas of disagreement with the majority, that we could at least come together on a report that validated the findings of the intelligence community, he told reporters at the Capitol. If this is where the GOP is coming from, it represents to me the completeness of their capitulation to the White House, and that leaves very little common ground. Democrats issued a 22-page report charging that Republicans abdicated their responsibility to conduct a thorough Russia probe, instead cutting off avenues of investigation and refusing to call dozens of potential witnesses. The decision to shut down the investigation before key witnesses could be interviewed and vital documentary evidence obtained will prevent us from fully discharging our duty to the House and to the American people, the Democrats said in their report, which identifies 30 witnesses Democrats wanted to call.